Today in the pedal vault, the Lekato Cube Baby. Before we start the actual review, little disclaimer here. This pedal was sent to me by Lekato, didn't pay money for it, and I can keep it after this video. However, each and every opinion is my own. I tell you exactly what I like and what I don't like, and Lekato has no influences over my words. So, and here we have the pedal hooked up, and well, let me explain what we have here. We have basically a multi-FX amp in a box. We have a cap simulation with different cap IRs pre-installed, and you can load your own. Then we have a reverb, we have a delay as well as modulation, and we have an amp. We have different amp types that you can select here, and we have for each amp we have a gain control and a dedicated tone control. So, and here we have a master volume. So let's head over directly to the EQ curve and, well, let's find out what this thing actually does. So first of all, here I can activate the IRs, and that's what I do. So now the IR is activated, I think. And now let's go through them. The first one is basically no IR loaded. Then we have different ones. I don't know how they're called. But they seem to be quite different. Okay, that's all the IRs. Now let's activate the amp. And first of all, let's dial back the gain. Now, first amp model. Just go quickly through them. Some have more gain, some are clean, some are distorted, and we basically just have a quick look at each model, what gain does and what tone does. So first model. It's very bright. Next has more bass. And an interesting mid-hump. Here there's some mids coming when we turn down tone. But all in all, it seems to be tone works all the same. Here we have an interesting dip at 6K. More gain decreases the signal. It seems to be that tone mostly works as a tilt control. Yeah, you could basically say that this is a tilt. This one doesn't have any mids, just high frequencies. Oh, and I can create a dip at 200 Hertz. Okay.
all seem to have this real high digital harshness above 10K. Most other amps that I tried don't have it. They actually have a cut. And all those amps seem to be able to be really bright. The first few amps, I think those were clean amps. The gain actually increased the volume, and now it does nothing. Sometimes it decreased it, which means more compression. Okay. Okay, those were all the amp models. And so now let me show you some more tricks here. When we activate the cap, we can actually activate the reverb. Now the reverb is full down, but when I increase it, the LED shines and it indicates that the reverb is actually activated. I think this is a cool feature. So delay is now activated, but I haven't, well, activated anything. So now when I add mix, my delay is activated and I have control over those three podies. And mod, I can have two distinct modulation effects that I'm not sure what happens here, and I'm not sure what happens here. But I have two effects. That's cool. So we also have a tuner, and I'll actually check out the tuner off camera and tell you what I thought. And we have another, well, mode. I press those two buttons. We're now in the, well, preset mode, and we have three different presets pre-dialed, and those have different tones, as you can see on the EQ curve. And you can actually edit those, so you can basically program three different sounds and have them on the fly whenever you press a button. However, you are limited to those three sounds, so you can't get both, maybe. So if you want to have this sound and now you want to have the same sound with the delay, you actually have to program it twice. You can't just turn the delay off. Okay, now let's find out how this thing actually sounds. So instead of doing the typical playthrough style, I thought a live review would be more appropriate. And first of all, we start with the three pre-dialed settings. So setting number 1. That's a lead sound. So, number 2. It's depending on the style of pickup you have, it's a crunchy or a cleanish sound. And number 3. It's an 80s style cleanish tone. Well, I typically don't like pre-dialed presets, but it's not bad. But now let's dive into the actually dialing it in ourselves. So, okay, First of all, we activate the cap, and we have activated the cap IR. It's slot 1, whatever that is. We deactivated the modulation and delay stuff, and we've activated the amp, and it's amp 1, and everything is okay. So let's find out what this is. Nothing. It's a clean sound. Okay, next amp. It's clean as well. A bit more bass. Crunchy. Bit more crunchy. Now it's more gainy. Way more bass. Whatever that is, I don't like. So I think, well, let's just stay with this amp. Now the tone, it's more or less a a tilt EQ. Now let's toggle through the different caps. So those are all the caps sound highly different, and I think they capture some typical cap IRs you find. I could definitely hear an SM57 sound. It's this it has this mid cut. I prefer the last IR or the very first IR, but I think whatever your preferred sound is, and with the amps, if you have one with more bass, you can basically dial in a cap with less bass and so on. I think you can get a variety of sounds. So far, this is the sound that I've come up with. I know it's not bad. It misses gain for my taste, but I really prefer my sounds really saturated and with lots of gain. So therefore it's okay. So let's dial in some reverb. Nothing too spectacular. I don't like my sound with reverb. However, lots of guitar players prefer their digital sound with reverb to make it more natural. I don't, so let's deactivate it. Some delay I prefer though. It's a nice delay. And now we have some modulation. Okay. Might surprise you, but I'm not a fan of modulation, at least for distorted sounds. But I think you have some nice controls to add a bit of modulation if you want to. I prefer though the delay. No, you can deactivate it. Okay, I can also deactivate the cap AR for some reason. And I can deactivate the amp itself. So technically, I could use this as a 2-channel amp when this is the clean channel, but it's too quiet, obviously. So I basically just have one amp with modulation, and so basically a rhythm sound and a lead sound with more delay. Or I have 3 very different sounds, but I will have to pre-dial them. Yeah, I think you got a nice overview of what this pedal can do. And I actually used this for 2 shows to warm up. And so I used it backstage, and I give you my final verdict, including the verdict I had after those shows now.
So let me divide my verdict into 2 parts. First, what you actually heard and saw on my typical review, and second, what I experienced during my 2 live gigs that I had with Burden of Grief and where I heavily used the Lekato for my warm-up routine. So, first of all, this thing sounds decent. It has huge variety of tones, and you can get a clean sound, you can get a drive sound, you can get a distorted sound. I miss some gain, but that's just me. And the IRs that you get with it, there's a huge span of different sounds you can achieve. So there should basically be at least passable sound for everybody. A huge plus, although I haven't tried it, is that you can upload your own IRs into this pedal, and that's a huge plus. If you, as I have, Bogren IRs or some other third-party IRs or some, well, real quality IRs. And we already found out that high-quality IRs are the most important thing for actually getting a good tone out of a even cheap digital device. And keep in mind, this thing is about 60 to 70 euro or so. So, second, what do I like? I really like that this has a battery and that you don't need a power supply. It makes it much more portable. The control, the tone control, it's okay. I guess I would have preferred a 3-band EQ, but I can see due to the limited amount of space why they chose just the tone control. The amps, I don't know if they are close to the originals. I don't care. I just want to have good sounding amps regardless of what amp they are based on. And here are some, at least one or two I used. The reverb section, it's there, same as the delay and modulation. It's not stuff that I use on a daily basis, if at all. I like some delay when I play cleans and leads, or some chorus if I play cleans. However, I can totally live without. So, not mandatory here. So, what I didn't like is the fact that you have, when you are in, I don't know how it's called, preset mode or live mode, I think live mode, where I can activate the amp here, activate the delay modulation here, and activate cap and reverb here. I don't like two things. First of all, I can just deactivate an amp and I can't toggle between two different amps. Would have been much more efficient if I could toggle between a distorted amp and a crunch amp or a clean amp. Don't know, however, if this is possible. Second, I don't understand why this knob deactivates both the reverb and the cap emulation. I would have preferred if it just deactivated the reverb, because either I use a cap simulation or I don't. I was never in a situation where I physically had to deactivate an IR with my foot, speaking in a live situation or whatever. So that's the minus here. And what I haven't tried all those fancy USB stuff. And the headphone stuff I've used with my Sennheiser HD 650s, and it's decent. I get a decent sound. So this is awesome for just sitting on the couch and hooking it up. You don't need any power supply, basically just your headphones and a guitar cable and jam with it. That's cool. So that was part 2. Part 1. Part 2, during the live shows or during the warm-up, first of all, the sound was good. I got a good tone out of it, and I had a huge plus that it has an included tuner, so I could tune my instrument backstage. It was really cool because it was really hot on the Mesa Open Air when I played it, and if I hadn't had a tuner, I would have had to stay on stage with my Fractal tuner for way longer than I had having this tuner here. So that's cool. The other stuff, I don't needed this, and I had a pre-dialed sound I played all the time, and this was awesome. Awesome was, again, no power supply needed. However, there were some cons here, and I don't know if it's Lekato's fault or if it's just my fault for being the person who I am, but I just want to let you know. First of all, the volume, I used it not with my Sennheisers, the headphone out, but with my in-ear monitoring. And with my in-ear monitoring, I could basically have the volume at 1.5 or 1.6, not over 1, because it was freaking loud. And I was basically right next to the stage where a thrash metal band was playing, and it was too loud for me. So that's because of my in-ear monitoring, I understand that, but it would have been cool if, well, the range of the volume would have been a bit wider. Yes. Another con that I haven't really thought about, before I had this, I had the Veil Tone Headrush. I think it's Veil Tone. There's a little headphone amp that you basically clip in your guitar and then you can jam. And while this, I think, sounds superior, I can't just connect it to my guitar. I have to have another cable with me. And I have to put it somewhere on the... if I have a desk, it's okay. But on this particular occasion, I didn't have a desk. And so I stood there on a shelf and basically had to adjust it to the shelf. Then with my in-ear monitoring, my cable was already under my t-shirt, and then I had to adjust the cable. Was a bit awkward, but it worked. It just was a bit awkward. And then a thing that I haven't really thought about, and I wouldn't consider it a minus, but I want to tell it. The tuner is actually only for standard tuning. I tend to play in standard tuning, and I could tune perfectly well. However, our bassist Flo asked me if I had any tuner because his basses were way out of tune, and I said, well, sure, I have a tuner. You can use my tuner, but since Burden of Grief is playing in C standard, I'm pitching my guitar up digitally. He couldn't tune his guitar or his bass because it wasn't in standard tuning, so my tuner is only useful for me. That's something you have to keep in mind when you want to use it in your gig bag for a gig. Okay, all things being said, I think this is, especially for the price, a cool product. I think I will personally keep this together with my Veil Tone in my gig bags. So when I have the possibility to have a table or whatever and a chair, I will use this. But if it's a really small backstage area, I can use my Veil Tone. As far as the volume goes, I have to remind myself not to dial it in too much. And apart from that, I can see myself use this for warming up. Would I use it in the studio or for some other reason? Well, maybe if I'm a beginner or an intermediate player and I don't want to spend lots of money but want to have a variety of tones, I would try it because, well, when I can have my experiences with it, and then when I am a little bit more comfortable with dialing in sounds, I can easily buy something else. And this isn't a waste of money because I can still use it for practicing or whatever. But as a pro or as a B rig, nope, wouldn't use it. It's just, well, it would work if there is a huge emergency, but nope. Okay, so what do you think about the Lekato Cube Baby? Do you own one, or do you own a similar piece of gear? What do you think? How does it sound? Leave a comment down below in the comment section. If you want to buy this particular pedal, I'll leave a link to Amazon in the description. If you want to support this channel, there are some more links in the description you could consider buying stuff from. Well, and with this said, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. May the force be with you and have a nice day.